Story 1. Once you realize you cannot trust someone, there is no fixing it. Even if you try to carry on, it will never really be the same again, and it fades away from there in my experience. Story 2. Sometimes, people just grow apart. No fallout, no anger, nothing really. You grow and realize you have become different people. You realize you are no longer on each other's call list. At some point, it's just well wishes for holidays and birthdays. You try calling them and realize you are the one who started every one of the last interactions you had. Then you realize you are doing so out of boredom rather than a genuine desire to know how your friend is doing. So you stop and add your best friend to the list of people you used to know. And it's fine. Story 3. Became the butt of the joke for everyone else in the group. Eventually, got tired of it and found real friends in middle school. Story 4. Hey, original poster. I am a 48-year-old married father of 2 in the United Kingdom. I had to distance myself from a university friend due to alcoholism and other addictive behaviors. We met in our late teens, but he never seemed to progress beyond that emotionally, and he was constantly drunk. Every time my phone showed his number calling me, I braced myself for drunken ramblings. Remember when? Or, let's get together and get drunk. Or, my wife's left me and I'm marrying my work personal assistant. My last sensible conversation with him was in the late 1990s, and that was only sensible because we both had early 20s mindsets and were drinking too much. I have matured since then in my own silly way, and he did not. I miss him because he was very kind, generous, and honest. He has chosen to prioritize alcohol over everything else, and I know, having had my own struggles with alcohol, that there is nothing I can do unless he wants to quit. He does not, and it is going to kill him. Surely it will kill him. I miss you, James. Story 5. I had a friend who started being very rude to me. I gave them multiple chances to change, but they kept saying mean things to be cruel and put me down. I ended that friendship. I forgive them, but we cannot be friends anymore. Story 6. The more I realized I was the only one reaching out. I did that less and less over the course of multiple weeks until I was certain I was not even worth a simple call, a WhatsApp message, or even a Discord message from them. 6 years later, I never received any message from them. They literally just vanished from their perception. Story 7. I may have been a bit of a misery magnet, but I had a few best friends who experienced constant chaos and drama in their lives, lurching from one crisis to another, non-stop interpersonal conflicts, and recovery from past trauma. I did not necessarily think it was my ex-best friend's fault, as some situations were completely out of their control, but it became emotionally draining and hard to cope with. It made it all the harder to cut ties because they did not do anything to deserve being cut off. I just needed to preserve my own well-being and mental health, as I kept getting sucked into the black hole of their problems and issues. Story 8. Living together. When people told me, "Don't move in with your best friend," I ignored it. I really thought that we would be one of the few people who could thrive living together. Boy, was I wrong. In 1 year, we went from talking for hours every day to a few words per week. They are moving out in a few weeks, and I could not be more relieved. I tried very hard to keep the friendship going, but I could not handle the way they treated me and my home anymore. Story 9. I needed a place to live. My best friend rented me a room. I met a girl and went away for the weekend. When I came back, all my belongings were on the curb with people going through them. He thought I had just left. I also needed a place to store my tools. I was a mechanic at a tire store and had a decent set of tools and specialty front-end tools. Supposedly, his garage was broken into and only my tools were stolen, nothing else. I have not spoken to him in over 20 years. Story 10. As I got older, I started to mature. I slowed down the partying and stayed home more often, even when single. When I went out, I took it easy and just enjoyed being social rather than focusing on drinking. He stopped calling when he realized I was no longer going to spend 4 nights a week getting intoxicated with him. Story 11. Apparently, some people bond because they have similar traumas they endured. If one of them overcomes it or makes an active effort to better their lives and the other decides to stay stuck, the balance of the friendship is disturbed and collapses. I was the one who matured. Story 12. She became distant when I became engaged and pregnant in quick succession. These were things she desperately wanted for her own life and could not see beyond that to be happy for me. She stopped communicating with me when I was 3 months postpartum. Story 13. My best friend was a man. I am a woman. Our relationship was strictly platonic. Near the end of our friendship, he got a girlfriend who was jealous of me. She told him to end our friendship, which he did by ghosting me. This happened at an event where I drove all of us there and back in awkward silence. Afterward, I drove myself home and cried so hard that I was pulled over and received my first and only ticket. Story 14. She used to live across the street from me, then moved a few streets away. We would see each other at school and talk between classes, and would ride our bikes to visit each other. Then I was the only one going to her house. She was barely around in the halls. She wasn't making an effort. One day, I noticed she was hanging out with the new girl at school, acting the same way we used to, and I realized I had been replaced. I just wish she had told me something, anything, instead of basically ghosting me. Story 15. When he took a girl from one of our other friends, it showed me there is no loyalty, and loyalty is the most important thing to me in friendship. Story 16. I found myself drained after visits. One day I left and ashamedly found myself avoiding them because the thought of entering their world for any amount of time caused me to physically cringe. They had a toxic relationship with their significant other, were always into a new fad or multi-level marketing scheme. Constant family drama, constant friend drama, constant relationship drama, getting financial support from others only to spend it on business ventures, holidays, and other unnecessary expenses, then complaining about not having enough money and ignoring advice. They are not a bad person overall, and I feel terrible for not explaining my sudden absence from their life, but my subconscious self-preservation clearly kicked in to save me from myself. I am too nice to say no or speak my mind, and there was no way I could either help them or convince them to seek help for the chaotic situation they were living. Story 17. When she called the children next door to her little black bastards. I completely understand disliking kids because I am not a fan either. It is absolutely fine to get mad that they are noisy, but they were under 10 and just being kids. They were trying to get her attention and approval. So I lost my mind, cursed her for being a terrible person, and we have not spoken since. Honestly, I should have left her racist, snobby behavior years ago. Story 18. When my son died, they just disappeared without a word. Not even an "I am sorry." They sent an email about a year later with pictures of their new home and an open invitation to visit. I never replied and have not heard anything since. This happened with more than one person, and it added more pain and hopelessness to my already excruciating grief. Story 19. I had some failure to launch going on in my personal life where I could not afford to go to his wedding. I think he sees me as less than ever since. I have since done quite well for myself but cannot seem to get him to respect me. I will always love the guy. He was basically my brother for a very important decade of my life. But eventually, you have to give up on someone who has given up on you. Story 20. He was my brother for years. But when life got better for me, new job, healthier habits, he started acting distant. I think he liked me more when I was struggling. The moment I didn't need help, I wasn't interesting anymore. Story 21. When I ran away because my father was molesting and abusing me, she was upset because we would not be seniors in high school together. I believe I was more a friend she liked feeling superior to. When I was living a more exciting life before her, it did not serve her to be my friend anymore. I do mourn the fun times we had. I have never found them again. Story 22. We were so close. Then first she got a boyfriend, and we stopped hanging out alone. The boyfriend was always there, even when I told her that there were things I wanted to confide in only her, not him. Then, if that wasn't bad enough, she told me she'd teach her kids that they would go to hell if they were queer, just like the Bible said. I'm queer, and I thought she was an ally. I slowly distanced myself from her. Eventually, I realized she wasn't as great as I thought she was. Our outings were always eventful. Fights would break out or confrontations would happen. I thought it was a coincidence, but with some distance, I realized it was always her. She loved instigating drama. Oh well, Good riddance. Story 23. She became very selfish and started using me as an emotional support. Whenever she called, she would complain for an hour about something in her life. She stopped asking how I was, and if I tried to share something about myself, she would interrupt to bring the topic back to herself. She never visited me, even though I live 5 minutes from her. I was expected to go to her house every time we met. We still communicate because we own an investment together, but the friendship is truly over. She is upset with me because I haven't prioritized visiting her newborn daughter, mostly because I am tired of being her emotional dumping ground. Story 24. We made plans, and when the day arrived, I texted and called before and after the pickup time but never heard back. The next day, I was out doing whatever, and he drove by, saw me, waved with a smug grin on his face, and drove on. He still never responded. It all clicked into place how terrible a friend he had already been over the years. Story 25. I wouldn't say best friends, but it was when the group literally wanted me to travel 2 hours so we could go to the beach. I live by the beach, and none of them ever wanted to come over because I was like 40 to 50 minutes away. Story 26. When I was about 19, I went out with some friends, but my best friend was not out that night. Her boyfriend was in the same club as me and did not live far from me either. She had been with him for about 6 months. I asked him if he wanted to walk home together, as he lived in the next apartment building to me. We were literally talking about his girlfriend when he sexually assaulted me down an alleyway. He tried to rape me, but I somehow got away. I called her. There was no answer, then the line was engaged. The next day, I said, "Your boyfriend did this." She said she did not know who to believe. She stayed with him for about 4 years and caught him numerous times on dating apps. Story 27. I became their therapist. They created their own problems, then called me at random hours asking how to fix the problems they created. I just could not deal with it after a while. Did they need a friend at that time? Probably. I tried. At a point, it became too much. Story 28. Her actions, but I still love her. Even now, I love a version of her that I know. I have always put a lot of effort into my friendships, and when I was younger, people took all my energy, love, and loyalty and gave me little. It was a month until graduation, and she punched me after I said she was really mature for calling me a bitch. We had smoked marijuana together the night before, and I left for my boyfriend's after she fell asleep. I had to take him to a tournament in the morning. That's when I had enough, just enough. She let all her colors show, and I didn't like the person she was. I'm almost 30 now, and that friend died of frequent cocaine and methamphetamine use that resulted in a heart attack at 28 years old. I feel so fortunate now that I stayed away from all the things she was around. I wish I could have said goodbye, but that will never be, and that's okay. I now have a friend who includes me, loves me, and shows up if I need her. I would never believe anyone else over her. She helped my husband get his really good federal job. She is a 10 out of 10 best friend. I married that boyfriend I mentioned earlier, who is my best friend as well. Story 29. His dog killed my niece's cat. She was staying with my brother while he looked for a place. I told him to get her out of there. He apologized and said he would as soon as possible. 10 days later, my niece texted me that his dog attacked my nephew's dog. He had not taken her from my brother's place for 10 days. I picked her up and took her to the pound. Story 30. We were a group of 3. I increasingly started to feel like the fifth wheel. This wasn't helped by friend 1 always telling me I hurt friend 2's feelings by something I said when the 3 of us were out. She would say, "You know why she'd never say anything to you directly, so that's why I'm telling you." As a result, I walked on eggshells around friend 2, and we became more distant over time. Friend 1 always had something to say about what I said or did in general. I increasingly felt like she was a disapproving parent instead of a friend. If I do something that bothers my friend, I am always willing to listen and talk, and I did make mistakes that hurt her. But if all you have to say to me is how I do everything wrong, then we are probably better off without each other. So I let it fade away. I met friend 2 a year ago to catch up. Turns out she never really held anything against me. We remain in casual contact every now and then. Friend one heard through the grapevine years ago when I had my eldest child. She reached out to ask if she did not receive a card, which is customary where I live, by accident or on purpose, and if so, why? I was willing to have a conversation, so I sent her my availabilities for a phone call, as texting did not feel right. She replied with her available times, but our schedules were incompatible at the time, so I let it go again. I could have put in more effort, but at that point I did not want to. So that was it. Story 31. It was honestly decided to become roommates. We had wildly clashing personalities that worked well together in small doses but exploded when confined to the same space. Story 32. He went full sovereign citizen, and this was years before COVID-19 and the whole sovereign citizen movement really took off. What is really funny is that we were friends in the army. The man who does not recognize the authority of the state had spent nearly a decade working for the state. Story 33. My teenage daughter was seriously unwell, and we were juggling coronavirus, doctors, therapists, work, and a lot of stress. One of my best friends of about 20 years would bombard me with frequent life dramas. I was overwhelmed by her volatile moods and seemingly unrelenting conflicts with family, other friends, and work colleagues. She was extremely needy and completely lacked insight into the impact of her behavior. I was exhausted by her demands on my time, energy, and empathy, none of which were reciprocated. She made some seriously questionable decisions and quit her job. I tried to support her in finding contract work, but she showed up for an interview and told my colleague that I had promised her the job. I had not, and this made things awkward with my colleague, who had interviewed her as a favor. That was the last straw, and I couldn't continue, so I effectively stopped responding to her. I told her I had to focus on my daughter and stopped returning her calls. I didn't hear from or see her for 4 years until another friend called me to say she had just visited her in a dementia unit. The erratic behavior was due to early onset dementia. I have visited her, and it was awful. I feel so guilty and horrible, and it is worse because the thought of going back to see her again makes me feel physically ill. It is beyond depressing, and she becomes very distressed. I would love to know if anyone has experience repairing relationships like this. Story 34. She did not care about my feelings. We were roommates. She called me controlling because I asked for a heads up if she was bringing company over. Her mother would go into my bedroom, and my friend got mad at me for giving her mother consequences for breaking my boundaries. Our neighbor's untrained dog broke out of their yard and attacked my other neighbor's beagle. The beagle owner grabbed a gun and shot the aggressive dog several times, and I saw the whole thing. Seeing a dog's chest expand with every bullet going into it frightened me, and I texted her for support. She told me that she had seen one dog attack another when she was a child, and that was awful. That was all she said. She made it about her childhood experience and did not think anything else of it. When I got upset with her for ignoring me, she thought it was about how long it took for her to respond because she genuinely did not care that I had just witnessed one dog get its throat ripped open and another one shot 4 times. The beagle was protecting a dachshund and made a full recovery. Story 35. To this day, I don't know, but I can guess. We were high school best friends after being acquaintances in middle school. We hung out throughout high school, even after I dropped out. Then, a year or so after high school, my girlfriend and I, who also went to high school together, brought him with us for a low-key New Year's hangout. When we dropped him off, I said goodbye. He said, "I simply hate you. Don't call me again." And that was that. I never pushed for an explanation. I figured if he had one, he would tell me. 2 decades later, I found out my old girlfriend, broken up with me for more than a decade, and him have gotten married. Honestly, great for them. They should be happy, but retroactively, I think I figured out why he started hating me. Story 36. I had a friend for over 10 years. Once, we decided to go on a holiday with our significant others. We ended up having too much of a party and switched couples during one night. It was intense, but we could not stand looking at each other's faces afterward. Breakfast was awkward. This was about 10 years ago. We make sure not to cross paths again. Sad but true. Story 37. She went to a high-end private college and I started working. She replaced me with wealthy music majors. I still attended her recitals and supported her, even though it hurt. When she graduated, all her new friends went different ways. She reached out to me, but it just does not feel the same. Story 38. She moved far away in middle school. Years later, I found her on Facebook and messaged her. She accepted my friend request but never replied to any of my attempts to start a conversation. It was strange since we had been on good terms as kids when she moved away. I never found out what that was about. I hope she is doing well. Story 39. He was always problematic, but I used to think he just had a unique personality. We had a large circle of friends, and one by one, everyone slowly cut him off, which also meant cutting me off, as we were always seen as a duo. It reached the point where it was just him and me, and all he talked about was our old friends and how they were the problem. One day, it was like a switch clicked in my head, and I couldn't take it anymore. I cut him off. When I tell you, it was like I couldn't breathe again. I truly didn't realize how much of a burden he was on my mental health. In retrospect, I also realized that I never really liked him that much. Story 40. We became pregnant at the same time. She had a successful pregnancy. I did not. I lost 2 babies that year. She needed a friend who could be happy for her and support her milestones. I could not look at her son without thinking of mine. We did not communicate our unmet needs. The friendship could not survive. Story 41. There were a few warning signs already, but what really broke it was her relationship. She was in an abusive relationship and seriously could not see it no matter how many times I said so. It got to the point where it was affecting me, and I just could not do it anymore. Story 42. I was diagnosed with stage 3 cancer while pregnant, and my child developed health problems including strokes causing brain bleeding. My best friends since childhood did not call or visit. It hurt and still hurts. It has been 7 years. Story 43. In high school, I couldn't afford my part for the limousine for prom, so I told my friend I would get my own ride there. She made me feel like such an outcast for being poor and then cut me off. I even reached out to her years later to say hello, but she wanted nothing to do with me. What a witch. Story 44. Too many canceled or rescheduled plans that did not happen for a man who was married and wanted nothing to do with her. Story 45. I was the one who kind of got ghosted and, I guess, broken up with. From what I heard, it was because I never reached out or tried, but I did absolutely everything and supported everything. I was shy and introverted and honestly didn't really have anything I wanted to do. When I got invited, that was when I wanted to do something, and I guess I got used to being invited and never tried. Anyway, now I have learned that person was actually pretty bad, and the other friends around me started telling me stories once they realized I had parted ways with him. I now know that I definitely turned a blind eye to his actions. It's funny what you ignore and what you forgive in some people. Story 46. His alcoholism and constant resulting drama always sucked the air from the room. At some point, I realized that my friends were not really a support network because everyone was nearly permanently in a state of crisis response mode for him. When I was at a very low point of depression and needed help, I asked aloud why no one seemed to care. Someone responded, "I guess we just expect you to be able to handle your problems better than he does." I sometimes miss some of the people in that group, him included, but my life is completely better for walking away and finding my people. Story 47. My wonderful best friend became depressed and shut everyone out. I am still there for him in the rare moments he feels like talking, but it is wearing me down because I have been going through some difficulties of my own. Any mention of these either gets ignored or is met with a comment that makes it all about him. The longer it goes on, the less chance I think there is to salvage our friendship. Story 48. My best friend sent me a death threat at work. It was all a big misunderstanding, but he died of cancer before we sorted it out. I think about it a lot. Story 49. She stopped contacting me after 25 years. My last message to her was ignored. She was one of my favorite people in the world. It makes me very sad. I have since realized that I did most of the work in our friendship. She may not be as good a person as I thought. Story 50. I was still figuring things out and had some issues. She liked the status. She would hang out with people who hurt her and then run back to me to help fix her problems. We were both in toxic relationships. If I needed support, she was quick to drop me. She could be really mean at times. She demanded a lot from me while putting in minimal effort. She also hated it when I made other friends or plans without her. She excluded me from everything else. I grew a backbone and decided I would no longer tolerate it. I would rather be alone than feel worthless because of anyone again. Story 51. When I asked her about her plans for the holiday, she told me but did not ask me back. When I said this made me feel invisible and unimportant, she said, "Sorry, hope you had a nice time," and still did not ask me anything about me, my activities, or even if I had a nice time. It was a small thing, but it was the result of a long buildup. Story 52. Controlling and abusive boyfriends. Her boyfriend had to be on the girls' trip, and they would fight and ruin everything. He was so demeaning to her. I hated it. I finally asked her to leave him behind for the vacation, and she said she couldn't because they were going to get married. He was mad I spoke up, and that was that. Coming from a middle-aged woman, best friends will come and go. She was my college best friend for a few years. I have since had a best friend in each city and phase of my life, and we all remain friends even if far away or in different moments in life. Story 53. I got them a job that they had failed to get twice before. I covered for them when they gave away too much physical cash and change. Then they blamed me because technically I had broken rules by covering for them. Looking back, it was the best thing to happen. They did great once we were no longer together. Story 54. She told me she had an affair with my now ex-boyfriend a year after we split. She asked if we could still be friends. No. Still reaches out to me from time to time, but she falls on deaf ears. I am very upset with Haley. Story 55. We entered into a relationship, but her family and she did not like that I did not share their faith or believe in spirituality, so she ended it. I had no problem with their faith or beliefs, but they could not accept that I did not share them. Story 56. They accused me of trying to use them to retire early. I dared to compromise only halfway after they renewed their side of the agreement. Admittedly, that was the latest in a long line of issues that boiled down to a lack of respect. Fundamentally, we had a change in living circumstances due to COVID. I gave options and offered help. The help came with certain conditions to ensure transparency. Those conditions were not met. I helped anyway, but to a lesser degree. Over the next 8 months or so, they tried to change the terms of the base agreement and demanded several £100 from me at the end of it. Along with that, there were other issues, such as cutting me out of social plans I proposed and stealing minor possessions. The last time we spoke was when they asked me to drop off some belongings at their mother's house the next time I was in town. We had grown up in the same town, and our parents still lived there. When I did, the following day I received an unpleasant message about bringing their mother into our dispute. When I replied, quoting the message in WhatsApp, they apparently forgot. There was no acknowledgement of the bias in jumping to that or its possible effects on other matters, which I strongly feel it has. That would have been a prime time to repair the relationship somewhat moving forward, but they chose not to. Story 57. There were a few things. She remained good friends with my abusive ex-boyfriend, whom she had met through me, despite everything he put me through. We eventually made up, but were never the same afterward. Fast forward a few years, and an allegation was made against her by a minor. It was the first time I was not able to say I believed her when she told her side of the story. I quietly stepped back and have not spoken to her since. Story 58. He wanted me to do something I was really uncomfortable with. When I said no, he got mad and just left. While he was leaving, I asked him to talk about it, but he never said a word. Afterwards, he just stopped communicating with me. It is disappointing because we were close friends for over 20 years or so, I thought. Story 59. We were 13. Things had been declining but came to a head when she blamed me for calling Miss Cleo from her phone. Her mom called my mom to ask about it, and I lost my temper. It was the angriest I had ever been. Luckily, my mom and her mom believed me, but the damage was done. Bonus points for her calling me later like nothing had happened, then trying to gaslight me into thinking I had called when I angrily confronted her. I am very upset, Rochelle. Story 60. He was a narcissistic person when I met him at 14. I thought that becoming an adult would change that eventually. No. I decided I had enough of that sometime in my 40s and completely cut him out. Story 61. Growing in different directions. I got married, had kids, and started a career after our college days. I went to visit him a couple of years after college, and he was not doing too well. He eventually got his life together, but by then we had grown apart. I watched from afar through social media. He seems happy. Story 62. She slept with her friend's baby's father. They were engaged and about to get married right after the baby was born. She had sex with him in a bathroom at a party. Her friend and I could hear everything. That is when I realized I did not want anything to do with her. Story 63. I caught his girlfriend cheating on him. When I told him, he took her side because they had sex, even though they only dated for about 4 months. I have known him since second grade. I saw him once years later, and he is married to another woman. So basically, he lost me for nothing. Story 64. You realize you are the only one putting in effort in the friendship. For this one in particular, I do not have anything against them, but it is exhausting always being the one to reach out, set up plans, and realize that the effort is not reciprocated when you stop. Story 65. My best friend would rather travel 1 to 2 hours to meet up with a girl than hang out with me when I live 5 minutes away from him. It's fine. I am not going to interfere, but it just shows how much of a hassle it is to see me. Story 66. It was during the time of COVID-19 and lockdowns. I had moved back to my parents' house during this period, so we lived about 3 hours apart. It really started when she became pregnant and then had a miscarriage. She accused me of not being caring enough and of being too focused on sickness advice. I was a sickness advisor. Somehow, I couldn't say or do the right thing, and the situation spiraled into something much larger between us. Once the second or third lockdown was lifted, I went to a friend's surprise 30th birthday party in the same area and told her I would be staying the entire weekend and that it would be great to see her. She told me I should make time specifically for her. A couple of months earlier, we had booked something but had to cancel due to another lockdown, and she didn't want to put anything in the diary to see me in case it was canceled again. She then went on holiday for the entire weekend. I was there with her boyfriend. We tried to meet again at a National Trust site, but she canceled last minute, saying her dog was ill. She knew I would understand because her cat had just died. A few months later, I found out she had lied about the dog being sick and just didn't want to see me. She got pregnant again, and I was accused of not being delighted enough. I was actually very ill the day she told me and could barely show enthusiasm about anything except not vomiting so I could sleep. At the same time, she told me the only reason she wanted a child was because everyone she followed on social media was having children, which confused me because children aren't trends, but what do I know? It was a mess. I couldn't say the right thing without it being wrong. I was constantly anxious. Up until this point, she had been the best friend I ever had. Her grandfather died, and I tried to be there for her. Then she sent me a long voice note saying she didn't want to be pregnant anymore, and that she planned to get plastic surgery once it was over because her body was already ruined. I realized I had nothing left to say. Meanwhile, another friend's mother was in intensive care due to COVID-19, and I was trying to support her. Another friend had been told her diabetes was so severe she could die by age 40 if it continued. I didn't reply for 24 hours. She blocked me after sending nasty messages about my silence. My parents' dog died suddenly, and she found out from a mutual friend. She unblocked me to say she would never forgive herself for not being there for me and made it all about herself. I then sent her a well-thought-out message explaining why we couldn't continue the way we were treating each other. I said I still wanted to be her best friend and be in her life, but this had to stop because we were clearly toxic and harming each other. Within half an hour, she replied with one of the nastiest defensive messages. I thought, enough. I can't do this anymore. I blocked her for a while. After I unblocked her, she continued to send hostile messages every so often for about 18 months to 2 years, unable to understand why I had decided to protect my peace. I never replied. I let her yell into the void. I was genuinely always afraid she would show up at my parents' house for a while. Story 67. I committed the cardinal sin and fell in love with his sister. Initially, it was fine. By the end, it was not. It was not worth what it cost in the end. Story 68. Not respecting boundaries and having an emotional affair occurred when my ex and another person shared their feelings and frustrations with each other. They did not cheat on me. When I split up with my ex and she asked for my new number, I told her immediately that I did not want to share it because I wanted to start my life without a constant reminder of my past. Story 69. They became a flat earther. They went nuclear on a mutual friend on social media, claiming they filmed child pornography, sold heroin and cocaine, and listed their name and address in the posts. Story 70. She entered a new relationship and made her entire personality revolve around him. She started asking to borrow money and lied to me about various things. She took advantage of me and tricked me into taking care of her child multiple times. I became tired of it and stopped talking to her. Story 71. I do not know. It just ended. Nothing. They stopped putting in effort or letting me know that they were busy. It just ended with no closure. Story 72. I used to have a friend who had a rough upbringing. He was a cool dude, social, everyone liked him, kept to himself, and was part of my close friend group for years. There were some issues with his behavior from time to time, but we attributed them to his difficult home life. We even tried to help him as much as possible, paying his bills because otherwise he would say he had no money and wouldn't come. We gave him rides and tried to include him as much as possible. But eventually, two main things happened. First, we caught him in a lie, which led us to realize he casually and routinely lied about many things. They weren't major lies, but that made it worse because it showed he would lie over nothing and for no real reason. Many things and situations were not exactly as he presented them. Second, as we tried as a group to help him get out of his rut, we actually succeeded. We got him a decent job at a friend's dad's company, and he started making good money. He bought a car and no longer lived paycheck to paycheck from dead-end jobs. We realized he did not really change. He did not reciprocate in any way the kindness we had shown him over the years. He simply drifted away on his own because he found what he considered cooler friends. This made us realize that all this time he had hung out with us because we drove him around and paid for his expenses. You don't really come back from that. We were inseparable for the better part of a decade, but eventually it just stopped. It's not like we don't talk at all anymore, but it is nowhere close to what it once was. Story 73. My best friend growing up was raised in a nice church, but there were some difficult beliefs, and his dad apparently wanted to be a preacher but was told no. I suspect this was due to anger issues. I went off to college, earned my degree, and he got much deeper into partying. At some point, a switch flipped, and now he runs a strange, fundamentalist church with many influences from Judaism but based on Christian beliefs. Like Old Testament-based Christianity? I'm not sure how to describe it. I wasn't invited to his first wedding. I'm still close with his cousin, who told me the friend divorced his wife because she miscarried and wanted a tattoo as a remembrance. Now he's married again, and his wife gives off major kooky fundamentalist vibes. He told me he cut me off at one point because he thought I was a bad influence, but the best man at both his weddings was also quite racist and a serial liar, so I guess that gets a pass. I rarely drink, don't use any drugs, have a family, and work a regular job. Story 74. 10 years of friendship. The first time I set a boundary and said, I am not comfortable having this conversation, she blocked me on everything. She then self-diagnosed as autistic and told a mutual friend that I am incapable of talking to autistic people. I have not spoken to her in 4 years. Good riddance, I guess. Story 75. He went to college and got busy. To explain, I was best friends with a guy in middle school and high school for several years, I'd say 5 or more. However, he was a grade above me. It was nothing weird, which is uncommon when a girl and a guy are best friends for that long. No, it was very casual and platonic. We were on the same League of Legends esports team since I turned 13, and he was 14. League of Legends doesn't exactly spark romance, but it builds bonds that you can only make when doing a team activity with a person for an extended period of time. He graduated in late 2023 because he went through the accelerated graduation process that year. I was there when he did. I watched. He always struggled in school, partly because of his home life and partly because of his learning disabilities. However, he always tried really hard and put a lot of effort into things. He was an A-B student despite all his problems. When he came back into the stands to meet his family after walking, I was there. He only had one sentence to say, "I did it. Guys, I did it. I did it." He was so excited. He wanted to go to college and get an astronomy degree because he wanted to see the stars. I heard from him a few times after that, but that was the day I think our friendship started dying. He wasn't there to just walk up to and talk to, and he didn't have time to play. He was also very busy, and when he wasn't doing something, he was sleeping. Thus, I got very few messages. He found friends, I know that. He told me about several people. Shame I never got to meet them. We officially stopped talking last August. I will admit I ended it. I had sent him 15 messages over the span of 2 months and got no response. Just days before, he had insisted that he would do better about contacting me, so I went with it. When he didn't, I just sent him a very long message. I told him that if he wasn't going to respond to me, then I might as well never text him again. That if I didn't get a response, I just wouldn't send another message. Mind you, this was after 2 months of no contact. I have yet to get a message. It's been nearly a year. It was like he died. He's alive and well, but to me, he was effectively dead. I was grieving for a while, if it can be called that. Still hurts to this day, if I'm being honest. I'm soon to head to college, and honestly, it's making me scared that I might end up doing that too. Story 76. She used my identity when stealing DVDs from a grocery store. I found out when I went to jail for not showing up to the court date. It was just overnight, nothing serious. After seeing the police report, I knew it was her immediately. Story 77. She called me to borrow money for online gambling. When I refused because I am struggling too, she called me selfish and told everyone I was not helping her with a project. Thankfully, I have a screenshot. Story 78. Dummy stole tools from me and pawned them at the closest pawn shop. I engraved information on them so they were easy to identify. I told them not to worry about pressing charges. It is enough to know he did it. Story 79. When he and the rest of my friends chose to support my abusive ex's actions as soon as she left me, even though he barely talked with her, I couldn't get over that and left the friend group. Now they are her friends. Story 80. He slept with my partner and sent me a video on Snapchat with the caption, "About time someone chose me instead." Story 81. She did not understand that a marriage, especially mine, is not something to discard because of a fight. I learned my lessons and became more private. Story 82. She ended the relationship because we were too close, and she thought being close to me was preventing her from being close to the man she was interested in. I guess it worked for her because she married him and now has a child. A couple of years ago, she came by my work and started texting me again, but I had to stop communication at that time. Ending that friendship the first time was one of the most difficult emotional experiences I have ever been through. I was worried if I got close to her again, she would take it away once more. I couldn't go through that twice. Story 83. I'm sure at least one of them is scanning either this thread or my profile waiting to see if I post. Hey guys. Story 84. Our lives diverged drastically. We made different choices. Eventually, the only thing we had left in common was our past. Story 85. We had drifted apart for a while, but eventually she started spending time with someone who had severely bullied me in childhood and early adulthood. I just could not get past it. Story 86. Drugs. Every time. The epidemic was strong back in the 1990s and early 2000s. I used the drug abuse resistance education method and cut them all loose. I see them being in jail and in the newspaper a lot, even these days, the ones that survived. Story 87. It took quite a while, but I began to realize that he really never listened to what I said, created his own version of events and conversations, insisted they actually happened, and did not really care what was going on in my life. We are still gamer friends, but that is the extent of it now. Story 88. We were soulmates and almost sisters until she met her husband, had her first child, and there was no time left between kindergarten parents, building her career and family. Just life happening. No big crash, no toxic partners, just different orientations in life. She now has the mother's group, and I have my life, my job, my studies, and my hobbies. Story 89. I told her in a very calm and clear way how something she said and did made me feel small and unimportant, and she asked if I was premenstrual. Story 90. He started openly flirting with my then-girlfriend when he met her for the first time. He knew she was with me, yet he tried to impress her, talking about how strong he was and doing random push-ups in the living room. He was always a look-at-me guy. When he went home later, I texted him that I felt disrespected and did not want to continue our friendship. He said, "You're on cloud nine now. When the relationship ends, you'll come running back." The relationship ended in April last year, and we stopped contact in November of the previous year. I have not spoken to him since. Story 91. His girlfriend was not okay with our friendship. I remember when he told me that he needed to go no contact with me for her sake. I begged him to let me talk to her to see if we could find common ground, but he was adamant. He had been my best friend since we were teenagers. We told each other everything, offered different perspectives, and unconditional support. I used to think about how lucky I was to have him in my life and how saddening it was that many other people might never know a friendship like that. His leaving was devastating. A year or so later, he messaged me after they had broken up, but I was still feeling fragile. I did not trust that he would not disappear again if they got back together. And they did. But this time, she and I talked. She is amazing. So driven, caring, passionate, and creative. If the circumstances had been different, I really think we could have been good friends. It was hard for her to trust, and even though she tried to allow us to reconnect, it hurt her. Eventually, I stopped messaging him because I knew how much they cared about each other, and I did not want to be a reason for their relationship failing. I still think about him frequently and miss our talks. In a different world, I really wish we could have all been friends. Story 92. I tried telling her she was hurting my feelings, so she called me a fat woman and told me my current boyfriend was going to abuse me like my last one. Two things I was very insecure about at the time. I never spoke to her again and have been married to that boyfriend for 11 years now. Story 93. He introduced me to a beautiful woman he knew. A few days later, I made a date with her for the following week and told him about it. That night, he called her, met up with her, and then slept with her. I thought it was a bad move and told him so. He got angry with me for calling him out, so I stopped contact and have not seen him in over 10 years. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.